Tony, if you're just jumping in the car, you're just jumping in. The big bombshell that was dropped is that the Justice Department is dropping their investigations in cities of Phoenix, Arizona, Trenton, New Jersey, Memphis, Tennessee, Mount Vernon, New York, Oklahoma City, Louisiana. Also, the consent decrees in Louisville and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Big news for the Phoenix Police Department and for Phoenicians in general. Joining us right now to talk about this is the president of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, Darrell Kriplean. Darrell, first of all, this has got to be some vindication for your men and women.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Mike. It absolutely is. The federal government abandoning this Phoenix investigation is a clear vindication for the city and our department.
You know, yesterday I talked with Dr. Travis Yates about this, and he said that what he found was 97% inaccuracy in the DOJ's report into Phoenix, but he went on to say that Phoenix could not have possibly been the first place that this was happening. He was shocked by what he found, and he said other cities should be looking at this, and it was almost like he was clairvoyant because all of these other cities are listed. What does this say to you about these DOJ investigations over the last few years?
Well, I think the DOJ has a pattern and practice of fraudulent investigative practices as evidenced by Dr. Yates' analysis of ours. I guarantee you that every other pattern and practice investigation, the findings report, are wrought with inaccuracies and sometimes just made up information.
What's interesting is that, and I don't know if this led to it, but I'm guessing it may have, Phoenix being the first city, really, the first major city, I know there was one other one, that stood up and said no. The city manager's office, the city council stood up and said, we are not going to agree before we see the report on whether or not we're going to negotiate toward a consent decree. And then once the report was out, the city of Phoenix, you included, put a website up defending the city of Phoenix and saying there's inaccuracies here. Do you think that led to some of this in these investigations?
I think that absolutely led to it. The fact that our city government, our city council had the intestinal fortitude to stand up to the DOJ power machine and tell them, which makes sense, right? You don't want to sign it or agree to something without looking at it first. That just speaks volumes to them. But I think it led to, look at Memphis. Memphis did the same thing, and I think that is directly related to our efforts here in Phoenix to kind of push back and say, hey, wait. We're not against continuing to improve our police department and our service to our community, but let's do it right and let's do it without spending hundreds of millions of dollars on unnecessary monitoring and other things that the DOJ tends to implement.
And you've been very candid about things as well, that no one has ever said that there aren't things that need to change sometimes or that there aren't times when officers have done something wrong, but you went in to show evidence that every time something like that happens, the Phoenix Police Department is taking corrective action. So an outside source doesn't need to help them do that. You have been a self-assessing, self-correcting agency for decades.
We have, Mike. And I think Travis Yates yesterday even spoke about where he felt that there were some cases where officers were disciplined where he thought that was a little overstep by the department. So the department isn't, cutting anybody any slack. They're disciplining officers when it's necessary and appropriate. And I'll tell you, nobody hates a bad cop more than good cops, right? We're not here to defend bad cops. If they do something wrong, we'll make sure that their process is fair and they have due process. But, at the end of the day, there are some things that are just indefensible. And we continue to harp on that. And we want our department to be an example of continuous improvement.
When were you informed of this? I mean, obviously this broke for us this morning. It was a bombshell. When were you informed that this happened?
Probably about 35, 40 minutes before it came out on the news. I've been in contact with some folks back in D.C. who let me in on it.
Has there been any indication as to what were some of the things that triggered this decision? Because it's multiple cities, so it wasn't something that they decided on overnight.
I think that, the new administration really started a deep dive on these investigations. And after hearing and listening to folks like myself, our city council members, other cities' leadership, I think they really found that, in fact, these investigations were wrought with inaccuracies and with straight-up fabrications. And I don't think that they wanted their names attached to something like that. So I think that this was inevitable because they're doing the right thing.
Obviously, this is good for morale in the Phoenix Police Department, but we dodged a financial bullet without a consent decree because we're talking about a minimum of $250 million over a decade that would have come out of the public safety budget when already we need growth in the Phoenix Police Department and the Phoenix Fire Department. This really is good for everyone, not just police officers.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, it wouldn't have just come from the public safety budget. It would have come from the entire budget for the entire city. So, parks and recreation, retirement, places for retirees to go. I mean, all of that would have been affected with that huge price tag attached to federal oversight.
Do you think that this will also be helpful in the city's search for a permanent police chief with this not hanging over the head of the department anymore?
I don't see how it couldn't be helpful, to be honest. I mean, that's a huge black cloud over any department to have to deal with the monster machine of the Department of Justice who feel like they can just act with impunity and really operate, in any way they want.
When you I'm sure you're having conversations with officers. What are you hearing? What is the feedback you're getting this morning from your officers, these plea members?
Officers are encouraged. I mean, they see this as a huge win. But I will tell you that, as the winds of change go, who's to say what's going to happen in 4 years if the White House and the administration changes. So I can tell you that, plea is working on a better plan to enhance police oversight around the country that will make it efficient, fair, and most of all effective. And it's going to include, or it's going to have to include our federal elected officials along with our state elected officials to put that into play.
So what do you say? What would you like to hear? Maybe you've already heard, but what would you like to hear or your officers to hear from now city management and the city council? What do you believe they will say and what should they say to the Phoenix Police Department and to the citizens of Phoenix that you patrol?
Well, I think based on the report that Dr. Yates and Dr. Che, put out after doing the deep dive on our pattern and practice, the findings report, I think our city leadership needs to acknowledge the fact that it was a complete fabrication and that they knew that our police officers were out there doing the right thing day in and day out and that they support them.
When you look ahead now, what will this help? This has got to help recruiting, but for new people coming into this profession, there was a cloud hanging over them of, the concerns of what they would have to do. Do you think those concerns are going to be lifted now, or do you think it changes it a little bit?
Well, I don't know that they're going to be lifted because I can tell you that there is a push for a lot of those recommended measures that the DOJ had in their findings report to be implemented within the city of Phoenix, which some of them make perfect sense. Some of them are bad policy, and we need to work through that. But I think overall, this is going to help recruiting, and this will help the morale issue.
So the people, the critics of law enforcement, the people that have been critical of Phoenix that were lobbying in favor of a consent decree, that have concerns about policing in Phoenix, how do you address them? What do you say to them this morning?
Those critics need to talk to their elected officials because, at the end of the day, federal oversight isn't the way to fix the issues of the Phoenix Police Department or the perceived issues. The way to do that is utilizing your elected officials locally and maintaining control of your police department as a community rather than giving it away to federal oversight. The federal oversight system has a 30-year track record of failure. And anybody who actually looks at those cases with an open mind can see that.
Well, Darrell, I'm very happy for you and for the men and women of the Phoenix Police Department. I think that this is a great day of vindication for all of you. I appreciate your time. And I will tell you, I want to thank you for your work on this because it was diligence and it was making sure you defended your officers with facts and putting out the transparency of the videos and the evidence and the police reports. I think a lot of that is what caused this. And you deserve a lot of credit for that. And I appreciate your time this morning.
I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, that's Darrell Kriplean. He's the head of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, PLEA as it's known.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch and listen to the new season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.